All right, great morning. It is Thursday, so we're going to make it a wonderful Utopia Thursday. Really here, excited about today's Utopia Talk in honor of Black History Month, Black Heritage Month. We're going to be talking about elevating health, mental health, well-being, and joy in the
Mhm.
Black community and even in the workplace. And so I'm really excited today to be joining you and having our special guest. I'm Naya Powell, founder and CEO of Utopia Global Wellness, formerly Utopia Spa and Global Wellness, and also the author of 30 Days to Utopia Living. I'm really excited to be joined here by our licensed therapist and counselor and resident therapist Leslie Stevens Tavera, also co-founder of Congruence Counseling, and we're also here and joined by Jonathan Granby with GTA Fitness. So why don't you all both say hi and shout out where you're joining us from and where you grew up? I think that's always nice to get a little fun fact in there.
Awesome. Hello, I am Leslie Stevens Tavera, licensed clinical mental health counselor. I am saying hello from Carborough, North Carolina. I am currently in my office at my practice, the Congruence Counseling Group, and I am origininally from Tappahannock, Virginia. So shout out to T-Town and the Tappahannock, Virginia area.
Beautiful.
My name is Jonathan Granby again, and I am from Elizabeth City, North Carolina, but I currently reside in Durham, North Carolina.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So shout us out, those that are watching, share with us in the chat. Where are you joining us from? Right? We want to know where our people are from. And I always say, growing up in Virginia Beach, and I meet people all the time, like Leslie, that are from these small little towns that I've never heard of. And I'm like, Virginia has to be the state with the most smallest towns. Because to have lived there most of my life and to always learn something new, I always think is pretty amazing. So I'm really excited about today's conversation and just having these experts with us today. So, just to kind of give you a little rundown of how today is going to flow, we are going to be talking about the topic of elevating. I'm tongue twisted today. Mental health, well being, and joy in the Black community and workplace. We're going to be talking about some health disparities that seem to really impact the African American and Black community and why, the what's causing it, and more importantly, what strategies can we employ? What tips are our experts going to provide for us so we can start living a life that's more holistically healthy? We'll also have a little ask us anything, so you'll get a chance to just those questions that you've just been wondering about. Maybe you've read something, maybe you're wondering, like, does diabetes just run in my family? We're going to unpack a lot of these things that we sometimes think run in our family, but really they're about the traditions. Sometimes we have
Mhm.
healthy traditions or unhealthy traditions and practices that we've developed and habits that we can unlearn to live, a life of longevity. So before I even unpack it even more, I'm going to run the risk of getting emotional, but I'm going to take a vulnerable moment to just really give tribute to my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, Glenna Powell, who lived to be 98 years young. She passed away today, earlier this morning. So, I just think that we are because they were, right? And so as we talk about Black history, that's part of my history and all the love that she's poured out into me and helping shape the woman that I am. And she was like so fabulous in her fashion, but also just such a huge heart. And she was such a I would say an amazing woman on so many levels, was filling her house with love. She always had just like a soft spirit, even though she was super strong, easy to laugh, easy to joke, and preparing beautiful, beautiful meals for her family. And as I hear my father talk about, part of their life, they grew up even in the projects of Syracuse. So there's some rich history there. And then even when they moved out, my grandmother was making them like duck and lamb. And he said stuff I would never tell my friends we were eating for dinner. So she always just had a way of like elevating, everything that she did. And so I just wanted to say that. And so if I do get a little emotional, that's okay, because vulnerability is a part of humanity. And I think we'll dive into this. But as Black people, we've learned to operate in our resilience and our strength so much that sometimes we don't give ourselves the space to not always be okay, and that's okay,
Right.
or to just pause and say what's really going on. So that's what's really going on for me. So I'm leading with my own vulnerability. And so I just wanted to share that. A few things that are newer for Utopia Global Wellness. If you've been tracking with us for some time, but maybe haven't tuned into a Utopia talk before this one this year, we now offer some new cool things. So we're now offering Utopia Living or Utopia Global Wellness Workplace workshops, group coaching, one-on-one coaching, and we also have a new partnership with United Healthcare. So if you are a United Healthcare plan holder, you actually get access at no additional cost to our live classes. Leslie's one of our thought partners that leads emotional and mental health coaching biweekly. John is joining us next week to offer high intensity fitness classes to get us right for the spring and summertime. And we also have a book club that we're launching, our global book club in March. And we will be reading Michelle Obama's book, so The Light We Carry. So lots of exciting things. So let's go ahead and dive into this thing. So, when we think about our well-being, I want to share maybe just a couple of quick stats. Pfizer did an amazing study, and it really talked about the health disparities in the Black community. And I've been knowing this, but in case you all didn't know, also the Centers for Disease Control, they highlighted how the Black community is suffering more from so many different health disparities, from high blood pressure. So it looks like this is a common cause of death. 12% in the Black community, ages 18 to 34% of people have high blood pressure. It's common in ages from, it looks like 35 to 49. About 33% of people have that. Also, in terms of diabetes, stroke, a number of different issues, cancer. And so let's just unpack all of this. So, why don't we start with um, John? Why don't we, since you're our newest guest, why don't we start with you first? Before we dive into unpacking, can you tell us a little bit about what you do professionally, even though I introduced you, and what kind of led you to pursue personal fitness, wellness, and nutrition as a career?
Okay. So what I do professionally is I own a private studio here in Durham, North Carolina, and what I do is I train people not just about their body, but also about their habits. I try to help them I try to get them to understand the habits that is causing them to to make their process of the fitness journey even harder. So I said, okay, well, hey, anyone can give y'all workouts, but I want to talk to y'all before we start these workouts about what it is that you need to do better, right? And we understand these things aren't going to be an overnight success. So it's something that we talk about often. I either have them join challenges with me that I'm doing personally, so that way they don't feel like they're always doing stuff on their own, or we do it as a community as far as with the gym.
Mhm.
I give them the exercise, but I also give them things to do outside the gym. So we have things scheduled to where, like, okay, well, if you have workouts, if you're going to work out on your own, these are your workouts you're going to do. And we have certain challenges where it's like, okay, this month we're gonna focus on everyone. Let's not eat too much sugar this month. Let's
Yeah.
not eat out this month. Let's not let's try to control our sodium this month. So that
Yes.
way we can have a better understanding and more challenges that are based around. I feel like it's healthy. It's better for everyone, but as we know in our community, those are the big factors that are at risk for us. So I try to just really hone in on um, not just the physical part, but also understand what we can do when we're not with our trainer, or you're not with me, you're not with someone that's holding you accountable. Learn to hold yourself accountable as well. What led me to doing this was actually my mom having breast cancer.
Oh.
I was always active. I was always, in the gym. I wanted to be actually a PE teacher first, and then I said, okay, well, now I understand that there's more to life than just, uh, you know, working in the school system. You can do things that can benefit the entire world, right?
Mm.
So once my mom had got diagnosed with breast cancer, it was like a brick hit everybody in the house. It was like, whoa,
Mhm.
this is real. Like, this is real. That was our first really tragic thing. Thank God she survived.
Mhm.
But just the process of going through all that and seeing how much she had to fight was really an eye opener for all of us. So that
Mhm.
made me get serious about understanding what caused this, what may have caused this. I know we don't always understand it fully, but you
Mhm.
can educate yourself as best you can. And a lot of it just comes back down to what you're doing as far as what you're putting in your body. Are you detoxing your body? And are you also moving your body?
Mhm.
So I started to take these things serious. I was like, looking up certifications and trying to figure out how can I help prevent this in other people's families? Or how can I help prevent this in people that's in my generation? Right.
Right.
So that's why I started just taking tests, taking different certifications, and I took it a lot more serious because it was now in my own home.
Yeah,
Right. And
absolutely.
that is what mainly led me to just dive in on everything. And it's day to day. I'm just always working on my craft, trying to perfect my craft, and just making sure that I help other people out in areas where I was once lost.
Mhm.
Because I don't want other people to experience those same kind of things if I can help avoid it.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that. And as you were talking, there were so many things that were coming up for me. Thank you all for joining. I see people are joining. Please share with us, some of the things that you might want us to cover and unpack while we're on this call and this conversation as well. But you said, challenges to really reduce sugar, right? And we
Mhm.
hear, that we need to cut back on sugar, but we really, I think, need to be talking about what sugar does to the body. We also talk about salt. So two things that you heard me mention is the disparities in blood pressure and diabetes. And
Right.
so these are things that we may be over indexing in. And it's not just because we're just simply, wanting to eat bad, but some of these things
Mhm.
are behavior and some of these things are socioeconomic. Some of these things are also tied to the wealth gap. And so, we have to look at things even systemically and relearn really healthy habits because it's cheaper a lot of times to eat processed food that doesn't really carry a lot of nutrients. And when it's processed, it's usually loaded with sugar and salt just so it tastes good and it's empty calories. And so we
Mhm.
have that. We also have the sedentary lifestyle that we're living more and more of. It has increased with COVID. It's also increased with the advancement of social media technology. I was a little girl that played outside all day. That's what I like to do. I didn't want to stay in and watch TV. How often do you drive through a neighborhood and see a bunch of kids running around? It's rare. And unfortunately, sometimes when I see it, I'm nervous if it's a main street that somebody's going to come take these kids. And so we live in a different time and age. And so, really unpacking that a little bit more. And I also want to say that in terms of what stress does, the higher stress levels that we carry also contributes to weight gain. It also contributes to obesity. It also even sugar feeds cancer. So I'm learning more because I have a nutritionist as well. And so the nutritionist was saying cancer is dumb, y'all. It's stupid. It only knows a couple things, but it does know what makes it happy and what it likes to eat on to grow, and it loves sugar. So when we're talking about we have episodes of cancer in our family, it might not be always because of diet, but there are things that we can do to make our bodies more equipped to fight that cancer away. And I've seen it in my own family. I've seen a cancer diagnosis. I've seen, getting a nutritionist. I've seen cleaning up a diet even more that was a good diet, even better, starving the cancer. And now my loved one is cancer free. So I've
Yep.
seen this. I've also become passionate about this world of wellness because of growing up as a third generation entrepreneur, knowing the stress levels, knowing that even if you're eating healthy and you're exercising, that if you don't have lifestyle practices, you still sometimes can't out exercise the stress levels. And stress releases cortisol, the fight or flight in the body, and then it really starts to break down the immune system and it makes us susceptible to all the things. And unfortunately, the Black community is dealing with a lot of layers of stress from a lot of different angles. So you want to chime in here, Leslie? I could see you.
No,
See you.
you know me. I'm ready. But especially when we talk about stress in the Black community, right, and what it's doing to our heart. February is also, I call it Matters of the Heart Month, right? So in
Yes.
doing the research and just identifying like what that cortisol, what that adrenaline does to your fight or flight system, and then it triggers your stress response axis. So then even when you don't think you're stressed, your body is still sending distressed signals. Even when you think, oh, okay, we're fine, everything's okay, by that time you have put that train in motion, and stress is wreaking havoc, causing that inflammation, causing rapid heartbeat, causing constricted arteries and things like that. So it is this snowball effect. It's the chicken and the egg scenario. We've got these physical health diagnoses which exacerbate mental health diagnoses. You've got the mental health diagnoses which exacerbate the physical health diagnoses. And like I said, once that train is in motion, everything is working all together to sort of dismantle the body and the mind. So that's why these talks are so important. That's why the work of Jonathan is so important. My work is so important. Your work is so important, Naya, so that holistically, physically, mentally, emotionally, we can work on all these parts of ourselves, heal our individual selves, and heal our community, because that stress is deteriorating us from the inside out.
And yes, and just to give you data to support that, 80 to 90% of death and disease is caused by stress.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what it's doing to us.
Yep.
So tell us in the chat, what are some of your biggest causes of stress? What's causing you stress out there?
Mm-hmm.
Is it finances? Is it family issues? Is it doing it all? I have a loved one near and dear to me, and she and I were talking, and she said, when people say, "How are you doing?" I say, "Okay," because I don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to say to us is we do have a choice. And maybe sometimes people don't really want to hear what's going on, but we should know the people in our lives that really do care, right? And for the people that really do care, when they say, "How's it going?" let's start operating at higher levels of vulnerability, transparency, and honesty and self awareness. Because what happens is we start to continue on this pattern of demonstrating and modeling this behavior as if we are invincible, and none of us are.
Right.
And we're just not. And so what happens is as we get older, our threshold, our foundation starts to get a little bit more cracked, a little bit more cracked, a little bit more cracked. And we see it showing up in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
So how are we seeing it show up? I'm going to ask this question to both of you. John, what are the ways that we're seeing the levels of stress and maybe an unhealthy lifestyle show up in our bodies? And then I'll pass that over to you, Leslie, after.
I think it's coming from a few different directions, even more so now because of the level of stress and the level of like fear people have of being themselves. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if you don't ever feel like you can be yourself when you walk out the door, it's already going to be a stressful day. Especially with the amount of things that social media portrays now, as if everything is perfect. You feel like you have no room to be imperfect. And I feel like that already puts an amount of stress in you before you even get in your car. You're trying to get a lot of things put together before you even, because you have to be presented a certain way. You can't have a day off just
Mm-hmm.
to be normal. So from bodies to, eyelashes to, it's everything you have to feel like you have to be perfect all the time. If you never
Right,
have a chance to kind of, just breathe and just say, today's going to be a normal day. Like what is a normal day? Nobody knows what
right,
it is anymore.
right.
So, that's going to be one of the biggest things as far as for mental, but like when it comes to the physical, a lot of those things start from how we were brought up by our parents.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not their fault, but it's now on us to understand how to change those things. And just
Mm-hmm.
to touch back on the sugar thing is sugar also releases the same kind of reward circuit hormones, dopamine, is just the same as cocaine does.
Mm,
So when we have a lot of sugar, we think that these are like, okay, it's just fine, just sugar. I
mm,
can, I don't need to have control over this. This is something I feel good about this. And
mhm,
we do say, okay, yes, reward yourself for the things that you want, so that way, the craving that you have, like, make sure you don't deprive your body of those things. But we got to be careful when you say that, because you're not understanding if you're doing harm to your body, and not just because it feels good, right?
mhm,
Everything that necessarily does your mental good is always going to be a good thing, right? So we have to figure out the balance in between that,
mhm,
and you don't take the time sometimes to detox your body from all the metals and toxins and things that we just consume from walking outside. It makes it even harder for your body to regulate its normal functions, right?
Mhm.
So even me, like, I start doing detoxes every 6 months, just like on the whole cellular level and everything. And I realized that the next day after doing my detox, I didn't
mhm,
have cravings anymore, and I could
mm,
sleep better. I could breathe better. Even if I got the same amount of hours of sleep, I felt like I got more sleep.
mm.
So on that level, it's important that we know how to detox our bodies, because if you don't, you're still carrying the same type of things that we've had from birth, and it's not just all genetics. It's about how you treat your body. Once you have full control, you have to say, well, I cannot choose to eat this and not this. Like
Yeah,
growing up, you got to do, your mom's paying for the food, your dad's paying for the food. That's understandable. You're just trying to make it. But once you get to that point where you're able to provide for yourself, we have to educate our community as well as them educating themselves on what they can do better as far as changing their health habits and having balance in that. Because if
absolutely.
not, it's going to
Yeah.
continue to get passed down, and we're never going to get ahead of it.
Right. So it's not that diabetes runs in our family. It's not
Mhm.
that high blood pressure runs in our family. It's not that obesity runs in our family. It is the lifestyle habits, the eating habits and
They're right.
practices that run in
Mhm.
our family. And it's a habit, it's a practice, it's something we learned, it's something we can unlearn. Did you know you could change your taste buds in 10 days? So if you like a lot of salt and a lot of sugar, and you start eating something that has less salt, less sugar, it may not taste great at first
Mhm.
because you're not used to it. But it only takes 10 days for your taste buds to start to adjust. So give it time. Anything worth having is worth working towards. So sugar affects the body in various ways. You'll see it in the chat, you'll see it at the bottom of the screen here. But frequency of consumption of sugar causes chemical reactions in the body. It promotes inflammation. So the interesting thing is my family is part of, I would say, especially on my mom's side, we're very sugar intolerant, even though we have the best bakers, cooks in the family. My maternal grandmom also could throw down, so both of them had their areas of culinary skill. My aunts can throw down, but we can feel it. So we also will hear people talk about gout and things like that. So, we also have people in my family that have gout. I can feel when I eat sugar. I can feel it almost instantly in my ankle because I had ankle replacement surgery, or in my knee. So it causes inflammation. It disrupts the immune system. It suppresses the growth hormones in the brain. It can also cause hyper activity. It can cause inattention. It can cause mood swings, and also really fluctuations to our hormones and our adrenal glands and our adrenaline, and make us exhausted and crash, as well as increasing blood pressure issues and cardiovascular issues. So this is what sugar does to our body. It's important for us to know that. And it is like that dopamine hit. So it's addictive because it does give us that little temporary high. So we want
Mhm.
more of that because it's easy and it feels good. But it's not, we don't see it as a drug, but it kind of is. So, Leslie, let's have you kind of chime in here because I know
Yeah,
you're ready
with
to
the
talk.
stress piece,
Yeah.
yeah, we're so overloaded and we are so inundated with our business and what we've got going on, but also everybody else's. Like Jonathan was mentioning, on social media, we take in so much through our eye gate, through our ear gate. Our brains are constantly excuse me, being stimulated. And when
Mm,
our brains are constantly being stimulated, that sends stressors stress responses throughout our body, right?
Mhm.
So taking in media that's traumatic, taking media that's not traumatic, but it's also just constantly flipping and perusing, that can cause stress on our bodies. Bearing
Mhm.
up under the societal pressures to wear all the hats, right? To be a part of whether it's church or civic duties, to
Mhm.
have a family, to be solid in your friend group, to make a certain amount of money, and putting a lot of things on your plate at one time and not taking the rest that we absolutely need. Our bodies need rest. And I'm
Mhm.
guilty. I'll be the first to admit it, right? I even have a
Yeah.
sweatshirt that says trust the rest because I need reminders, right? Our bodies need a lot more rest than we're giving it, than we allow it to have, because we don't know our limits. We think we're invincible. We think we can handle it all. And we think that it's okay if we just plow through. And it's not okay. We've really got to take space for ourselves. Research suggests that one should take an hour a day for rest, but that's not perusing the internet on your lunch break. That's really
Right.
being
Mhm.
intentional about going for a walk and decompressing. We should take that one day a week. We should take 1 or 2 weeks a year. And those are old stats, right? From like 10 years ago. So it probably means now post COVID that we could value 1.5 or 2 days a week. We could value 2.5 weeks of vacation a year, right? Because
3, 4.
3, 4, based on what we're going through and experiencing, the stressors all around us are at a much higher level, and we are still here in our human bodies taking all of that in. So,
Mhm.
so we really need to balance the stressors that we have with a
Mhm.
greater amount of rest and
Mhm.
downtime and decompression, and not allowing our brains to be on. Even
Mhm.
blue light, right? Even blue light sends a receptor to our brain, like be on, be on, be productive, right? And many of us have blue lights on our computers, in our homes, everywhere. So we've got to balance that.
And
Mhm.
I'm glad you talked about that, what rest is and what rest is not, right? We hear a lot of people say, "Oh, well, I only need 4 hours of sleep. I only need 5 hours of sleep." Well, studies show that if we're not having 7 to 9 hours of sleep, that we're damaging our heart. And so something that you also see very high rates of in our community, you see high rates of stroke and heart attack. And so literally we're damaging our heart with the rate in which we're going to try to keep up the appearances on the gram. As Jonathan talked about, we're trying to keep up with even, the strong model that maybe we saw our grandmother or our mothers, doing it all. And I think Michelle Obama just did a really good, she did a talk about, I think it was like a month ago when she was first launching her book. And she said, when I grew up, like my family lived in my community. So I like never had a babysitter outside of my family, hardly ever. And so when you think about the sense of community and just even thinking about living in close
Right.
proximity that we used to see often in the Black community. And
Right.
now that we've kind of our careers have taken off and we've started to really, I would say, spread our wings in a lot of different ways, we now have a different type of lifestyle where perhaps we're living cross country or across the globe from our family. We're not connected in the same way. And that's a huge part of our well being, but we're
Mhm.
still trying to do it all. And the work
Yes.
demands are higher than ever before. And so now
Mhm.
we're trying to, even as the women and the men were both working very like just grueling work hours, intense work hours because of technology. We don't cut it off. These blue lights are even coming through in our bedroom next to, dinging and pinging. So I do not disturb after 10:30. I recommend it. People are sleeping with the TVs on and just all of these things are coming in, right? But we're trying to live this life and still do that, still trying to see if we can have the kids and the activities that they're in are off the charts. I'm like, this is crazy. They don't even have, a lot of kids don't have what I would consider a normal childhood anymore. It's like the demands on their life are just like working a 9 to 5 job with all
Mhm.
the activities, and they're running until my nieces are running until 9 and 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, this is like unreal with all the things. And they're good things, but it's just like, this is the world that we live in. And so when do we take time to press pause and also recalibrate and say, I don't have to do what everyone else is doing, what it seems like everyone else is doing. Is this healthy for me and my family? Is this healthy for our levels of rest, stress levels, well being? Are we even able to sit around the dinner table? Thankfully, we grew up, my father was really adamant about this. We would have dinner together. And then when I would go visit other friends, sometimes I would see like, oh, other people don't always do this. So it was a really a beautiful thing that we grew up doing that. But I know that that's not the case for the modern family hardly at all anymore. People don't sit together at 7 o'clock or 6:30 or 5:30 and eat a meal together hardly ever unless it's once a week or a holiday. So when we think about that, I'd love for you to weigh in even more. Like Leslie, I think you touched on not just the stress levels, but just the sense of community. I'd love for you to weigh in on that, and especially as it relates to Black people. Why do you think that we struggle with this so much?
Right. Well, we're communal beings by nature, right? We've been in community for generations upon generations. Historically, we're tribal beings, right? So we thrive in community. But like you're mentioning, with people living in other cities and other states, we want to stay connected to our family of origin. We want to stay connected to our people. And then we create families, right? We create our families, our chosen families who are our friends to be connected with wherever we are. And the challenge is, quote, making it all work, right? We're
Yeah.
supposed to be connected. We have camaraderie, and there's a degree of safety. We are conditioned. Our brains are hardwired for survival and safety. And we do that in community. And when we're not in community, there is a message, and it's not conscious. There's a subconscious message that says we're not safe. We're in
Mm,
isolation. And then when we feel isolated, we begin to feel symptoms of anxiety and
mm,
symptoms of depression. So
mhm.
it's absolutely important to be connected to your family in a healthy way, be connected to your family if you don't have family around you, and
Mm,
making sure that there is connection, but there is also healthy boundaries to say, like, I won't be able to attend this event this weekend with you all, but I will make the next one. So now we're having to have enough space with family to not be isolated, but enough boundary to be able to say, this is a lot, doing something every weekend, or driving so far for all of these things. We have to know how to exercise restraint and boundary, as well as show up to get that community and camaraderie that we need.
yeah. And I was sharing this with Leslie this morning that I really do think that, a lot of why my grandmother lived to be 98 years young was because of community. You know, her daughter, my aunt, lived in a house with her. My other aunt lived two doors down and came over almost every day. And so when we're surrounded by love and community, and it does look different, sometimes we have to create our community like family. And I'm big on that because I've lived far away from my family most of my life, adult life, but I also go home a lot because I don't feel anchored if I go too long without seeing my family. So community is so important. And John, you spoke to it. You created your fitness community to really help support people on their fitness journey because it's hard to do hard stuff by yourself.
Right.
Yes.
Hard stuff shows up in a lot of ways. And so what are
Right.
some of the things that you notice from, people that were trying to do it on their own and now they have your community and seeing the difference and the impact of that?
So I have clients that, because of their jobs, they end up moving, or because of the housing market now, they got to move 30, 40 minutes out. And
Mm,
one thing that I have recently found is that you can't find community everywhere,
mm,
right?
mm,
And I was actually surprised because, I know I do good with business, but I think about, like, okay, if you move to New York, I would assume you'd be able to find something that is similar to what I have. But I was
mhm,
wrong. Yeah, if you move 45 to an hour out, you can find something that would kind of give you at least something close to this. I was wrong. I have people
mm.
that, move back from New York that say, hey, I need to come back. I've gained all this weight. I need to come back. I like,
Wow.
why you work out when you was, up north, and like, what was going on? It wasn't the
Yeah.
same. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel safe.
Wow.
I felt
Oh.
like, and that's when I just, I started to realize, like,
Mm,
wow, like, it's not even just about,
mm,
somewhere to have fun. It's also about somewhere to have fun and feel safe and not feel like somebody's going to, try to attack you or try to put a move
mm,
on you sexually, or like a lot of
mm,
things. It's making
mm,
people, like, making an environment people feel like they can just be themselves and safe. And that's what I've noticed, is that you can't get that kind of energy everywhere. But now that I say this, I'm one of the people that moved away, and from where my family is, and we were just like, like you said, Naya, it was, we had that really stronghold community where all my family stayed on the same block. Aunts,
Mm-hmm.
uncles, brothers, sisters, all on the same block. Nobody stayed no more than 2 minutes from each other. So if I
Mm-hmm.
needed to borrow some sugar, I go walk to my aunt's house. If I needed to go and, you know, get get in the house right quick because, 'cause if I lost my key or something, I stay at my aunt's house. If I need some food because my mom hadn't got home yet, I go to my uncle's house. Like whatever it was, I had everything on that same block. But
Mm-hmm.
what started to happen was that, evolve or die. The world started to change so much. So that's when the stress and the pressure comes in, that where your current community is at, you may not be able to stay there because of the sacrifice you have to make to keep up.
Right.
Like you said, that pressure to keep up. And you feel
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, well, I can't stay here, not because I don't want to, just that the resources that I need aren't here right now.
Yeah.
And you can definitely do the same thing, but it may take you 5 to 10 years longer to do the same thing. Where as soon as I got moved here to Durham, North Carolina, I warped the time, and it took me only 2 years. Versus back at home, they're still building up, they're still trying to get some of the same things that are available here,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to always be behind in a sense, but it's growing steadily.
Right.
So there's just a mixture of so many things as far as with the community. You want to have the community, but sometimes the things the resources around the community that you have may not be the best for your financial growth, or
Yeah.
your spiritual growth, whatever the case, whatever it is. You may just have to go somewhere else, and to get some in your aspect that's greater, you may have to sacrifice something that's actually better for you. You know,
Right.
um, you can never go too far away from where you feel like the love and the home feeling is at. So no
Mm-hmm.
matter what you do, you always end up coming back some way somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I realized, that no matter where people go at, they still feel like I get clients that text me and say, "Hey, I just want to let you know you're still in my brain. I can hear you saying, put some weight on. Good job." And I'm like, wow, it's crazy. I ain't trained you in 5 years. You can still hear me in your head telling you to keep going. Um,
Yeah.
so so that's how important I've seen the community factor plays. But some people just have to evolve because of the fact of, like, it's just better for their career. And that's always a hard choice to make.
Yeah. You said so much while you were talking, so much came to mind for me, and like so many things. And so a lot of times, as you talked about the neighborhood that you grew up in, like with your family, when everybody was on the same block, that had to be
Mhm.
amazing. Like you had to feel so
Yes.
safe. You said
Yes.
people not feeling safe. And so
Yeah.
one of the things that we talk about a lot at Utopia Global Wellness is you cannot have well-being without belonging.
Yes.
Hmm.
Being well, to be whole, to be healthy. Belonging is a part of that. And you
Yep.
talked about safety, feeling safe. Growing up in your neighborhood made you feel safe with your family all around you. You felt safe, right?
Right.
You felt protected. You felt understood. And so we also see this language now in the world of corporate America in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And that's something that's very unique about Utopia Global Wellness, is that we sit at the intersection of well-being and mindful inclusion, diversity, and belonging. And so when we talk about belonging, it's a fundamental need. It's part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's belonging, and it means psychological safety. And so when we really unpack so many different things that affect the Black community, the sense of belonging is one of the things that we often don't feel. And you
Right.
talk about, like, yeah, where I grew up, I felt safe. But when I came to Durham, I was able to accelerate my goals. So sometimes we are leaving the nest, if you will, for opportunity to advance our lives further. And so we might feel like we're advancing our lives further by working for this major organization or getting into this amazing school, which is great.
Hmm.
And we need these things to help us blossom, mature, and get different perspectives on life. But then at the same time, once we do that, sometimes we're trading in one thing for another, and we are sometimes the only, or we feel like we're an island to ourselves, or we feel like we're, prey for predators, or we don't feel safe. And that's not just in a move in terms of maybe the new city, state, or neighborhood, is sometimes even in a corporate environment too. And so
Okay.
there's a lot of psychological unsafety that happens. And I have a family member first year out of school, got a job working in tech, and really great, very proud and happy for him, and dealt with so many, I would say, macro aggressions. And we
Mhm.
won't call it micro because there's the macro aggressions, the gaslighting, the psychological twists and turns, and had a little bit of a break, and is now doing very, very well. But everybody doesn't rebound in the same way. And I think the
Mhm.
rebounding also came from being surrounded with love and family.
That's
We know
right.
everybody doesn't always have supportive love and family. So, I just wanted to unpack that a little bit, that we have the socioeconomic disparities, especially when, as we even talk about the workplace a little bit, this is why we're seeing more of a movement around ERGs, employee resource groups. We're seeing more around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I had the privilege of leading and operating as the vice chair of an ERG community at Red Hat in tech, where there's not a lot of Black people in tech. Most companies have about 3%, between 1.5 and 3%. So when you don't see people that look like you instantly feel like, is this a place for me? Is it okay here?
Mhm.
Am I safe here? Are people going to support me and support my success here? And then, so all of those things matter. But having that community really made it a place that I could look forward to, a place where I could feel understood, a place for connection and creating that for others. But you also have with that, there's a layers of effect. So if there's not a lot of people that look like you, if there's not a lot of people that might be championing for you in the workplace, then are you as likely to advance? Are you as likely to get promoted? Are you as likely to be invited to the golf tournament, the baby shower, the happy hour, where more of those connections and relationships are built? A lot of times it doesn't happen because of this thing called unconscious bias.
Right.
And so, therefore, there is also an economic gap where a lot of times, there's only 4 Black CEOs in Fortune 500 companies. So that's in America. So that already shows you that there's a huge gap and there's a lot further to go. But that's also why entrepreneurship is a great possibility to create generational wealth. But then there's a gap in institutional funds, in VC funding. So there are all these different things that we're having to overcome and navigate, and often feeling like you have to not be your authentic self to fit into an environment that feels very different, so people can feel more comfortable and hopefully not try to sabotage your success. So these
Right.
are a lot of things that the Black community goes through, which makes our health challenges and mental health challenges that much higher. And so, Leslie, I'd like you to even like talk about the levels of depression. We recently did an amazing mental health in the workplace workshop for a
Mhm.
global biotech company, and we unpacked a lot around stress and mental health. And I'd love for you to take a moment to unpack how all these things affect our mental health as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Racial trauma, carrying racial trauma from generation to generation. What you're talking about, being in corporate spaces where we don't feel the sense of belonging, feels traumatizing to us. Just the sort of innate and unspoken ability that we do have to code switch, right? To speak differently, to show up differently. All of those things create stress on us. And with that stress, how it leads to depression is when you feel like you can't be your authentic self, when you feel disconnected from who you are, when you don't have the serotonin and the endorphins kicking, depression comes, right? Because it sends this signal of I am not enough. I am alone in my experience. I'm disconnected from my truth. I'm disconnected from who I am. So symptoms of depression include a lack of interest in the things that one used to be interested in, or lack of pleasure, isolating, feeling self worthless, right? Even symptoms of suicide, suicide ideation, SI, symptoms of SI. So feeling disconnected, feeling like you don't belong, isolating more, and not having motivation and pleasure to do the things that one normally does. And the challenge, Naya, when we're talking about the mental health piece, is that anxiety and depression are underdiagnosed in our Black communities.
Mhm.
I've given assessments right? And so what the assessments ask for is there physical, mental, occupational impairment in your day to day? And our
Mm-hmm.
brothers and sisters will click nope,
Mm-hmm.
because we're not taught that our day to day can be impaired. We have to keep going,
Mm-hmm.
right? So even with these assessments that have been created by white people, with these assessments, we're not going to look like that assessment. And then
Mm-hmm.
anxiety and depression will be underdiagnosed because it shows up differently for us.
Wow. Wow. And so we're also, I think, taught maybe it's subconsciously to be okay also when we're not okay because we
Absolutely.
have to keep performing because there's
Absolutely.
no time for whining. There's no time for not getting it done. So you got to
Right.
press through and get it done anyway. So
Right.
that's that over indexing on the strength and not wanting to be vulnerable. And so we're seeing this show up in record highs of anxiety and depression. And so I'll share a couple stats. 1 in 5 adults in America are living with a mental health issue, but African Americans tend to have mental health challenges at a rate of over 25% higher than their white counterparts. For entrepreneurs, 72% of entrepreneurs, and all three of us are entrepreneurs, deal with mental health challenges, everything from anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, substance abuse, and so forth, right? And so these are really, really, really serious. But if you're African American, at 25% on that. And so we're at like the 97 percentile dealing with some sort of mental health challenge. And how are we dealing with that? Are we being in tune with that? Or are we self medicating in some sort of unhealthy way? What are we doing if we're not even talking about it? So I want us to start being more self aware, start realizing that just like if I were to, well, I'll just use an example that happened. I had a bad car accident a couple of years ago. I'm still healing. They say it's gonna be a lifelong process. I don't want to claim that, but I'm gonna always have to work hard for mobility to stay healthy and agile and all of that. But it was a bad accident, you all. So would I just say like, oh, I had to get my whole part of my ankle replaced? Is that something I'm gonna say I'll fix myself? So I don't know why we do this with our mental well-being, that we assume that we don't need any help or expertise. We need expertise. Hey, our mom, our dad, our best friend, our aunties, they're going through life too, just like us, and don't always have, most of the time, unless they are a licensed therapist, they don't have the skills to really help us. Like the surgeon I went to for my ankle was one of the best in the country,
Right.
right? And I wasn't going to go to just anybody, but I knew I couldn't do it. And also, I'm not going to go to just anybody. So, why do we do that with our mental wellness? Why are we so reserved around getting the help that we need around that? Because we're also seeing suicides go up, and we need to talk about that too. So, Leslie, unpack that for us a little bit. Why is it that we are not comfortable in this space?
There's still a stigma, right? Even with the widespread understanding and more public figures are speaking out, get the help that you need. There is still a stigma in our Black communities, unfortunately.
Mhm.
And also too, there's distrust of the medical system and the mental health system. Unfortunately,
Mhm.
only 4% of therapists are Black.
Mm.
76% of therapists are white, right? So here at Congruence Counseling Group, we center the needs of Black, Indigenous, people of color, and marginalized groups, right? But this is a small percentage in comparison to the rest of the community of therapists. So too, when people come to therapy, they want to see somebody and talk to somebody where things don't have to be explained. I know that for myself, I hear that all the time from my clients. I don't want to have to explain what it means to be a Black person or how this goes or how this went in my family of origin. I can look at you and I know that you're getting it. I know that you're understanding me, and it's easier. So the stigma is still there historically, but also there aren't enough Black therapists to support the growing need. And historically, Black people will get their mental health information from somewhere else outside of a professional source.
Mhm, mhm. So thank you for unpacking that. And then I think for years we didn't really understand mental health, and so if somebody was being seen or something, we might label them as crazy or
Right.
something like that. And so we would attach these labels. And you don't have to be crazy. You just really have to be seeking wellness,
Right.
wholeness,
But
wellness.
it's generations deep, right? Somebody had this relative and somebody had that relative. And as a child, you get that conditioned message. You don't even remember the conditioned message. You just know that if you told your family you were going to therapy, or if you admitted to yourself that you needed therapy, someone would label you. So it's
Yeah,
these messages that we've taken in that we don't even know where they're coming from, but it shapes us.
absolutely. Absolutely. And we've learned to, well, I want to say something really quick. I have I haven't talked to her in years, but I had a girlfriend in Atlanta that wrote a powerful book on, I think it was Love Heals All. And in her book, she talks about her story, her mother's story. Her mother was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and this is part of the book. But then she was able to really have a more healthy, harmonious life, and I won't say completely healed because I don't know if that's the case, but a high functioning life as a person that was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And what struck me, and it made me start to look at um, just patterns of life, is that her mom went through a series of trauma as a young lady. And there was one traumatic experience that kind of prompted the break. And so I always say that we were never designed to be mistreated.
Right.
And so mistreatment looks like a lot of things. It's not just physical abuse. Sometimes it is just not being even seen or heard or acknowledged, or verbal abuse, or being talked down to or omitted or excluded. It looks like a lot of different things. And I also want us to start to evaluate what toxic behaviors are we perpetrating. What have we experienced throughout our journey of life, family, workplace, and what are we now putting other people through?
Right.
And if it didn't serve us well, if it wasn't healthy and whole and life building for us, then let's not do that. So let's take an inventory of these unhealthy behaviors that we've seen in family, we've seen in our friend circles, we've seen this men behaving badly, all of this bashing. I hate to say it, but a lot of stuff we're seeing on a reality TV is starting to really shape the culture and the ideology. And now we're even in this world where we're talking about the cancel culture. So now we've just cut everybody off. And so you know what? If you live in isolation, you're really going to be depressed. If you're super self-absorbed and super all about your selfies, your you. I saw this quote and I believe it. There's no selfish person that will be happy. You can't be selfish and happy. And so we're living in a culture that's really perpetuating this. But I want to really ask us to pause and really take inventory of what we're taking in and feeding ourselves. And is it life-giving? Is it healthy? Is it contributing to a world of wholeness and community? Because that's what this thing is really all about. So we really just need to be unpacking all of these new social norms, and also looking at the history of trauma even within our family. And one of the things, going back to, I kind of went on a little tangent, going back to my friend's mother, is that surrounding her with love and support healed her.
Mm.
So that's why it's love heals all. And so I know I actually had a close relationship with someone else, and their father ended up having a schizophrenic break, but it was after being abused in the military as a grown man. And so I said, you know what? This breaking that happens, it happens under trauma and abuse. And so we can heal and restore with our words, with our presence, with our love, with our actions, with therapy, with investing in our bodies, in movement and nutrition, and the mental being that we really need to be investing in.
Absolutely, Naya. That's so good. That's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. So I know that you often have talked about also, Leslie, people being depressed and still high performing. And I want you to talk about that in the last minute or two. And also the suicide rates that we're seeing in the Black community, because this is something that we also need to touch on.
Absolutely. In 2019, suicide was the second leading cause of death for Black and African Americans between the ages of 19 and 24, right?
Wow.
And right now it's the third cause of death, I think up to age 35.
Mm,
So it's rampant, unfortunately. I'll jump a little bit because there's a correlation between high functioning depression and suicide, completed suicides. So, high functioning depression is a term that's been coined recently, as we see more of the high profile celebrities um, dying by suicide, right? So they were so happy. They had it all. They had it all together. They were always bubbly. They gave everything to the rest of the world. But
mm,
what we don't see is behind closed doors, those symptoms of depression, right? So high functioning depression means that you still show up for work, you still smile, you still laugh, you're still gregarious, you're still giving this joy to the world. But we often give to people what we would want for ourselves, you know? So when we're talking about community and belonging, what people need to know is that they're safe being vulnerable. They're safe being their whole selves. They're safe being their authentic selves. They're safe being their quote broken selves if they're feeling particularly broken in that moment, and that they will have people who will love on them and come alongside them. And we use the term one another, each other, so that
mm,
they don't feel isolated in their experience. So they're putting on a facade because they don't think that it is safe
mm,
to be their true selves, to take some time away, to step back. You know, it's this conditioning from their lives. I've got to perform. I have something to prove. I've got to be the best. I have to keep going. Others are depending on me. And we, unfortunately, in our Black communities, we reinforce those messages all the time. So
mm,
high functioning depression has a correlation with high achieving people, overachieving people, and people who don't allow themselves to take pauses and admit their vulnerabilities to their community and their circle. Now, it's
mm,
not that they don't seek help, right? Because people with high functioning depression still seek help, and they still may end up completing a suicide and dying by suicide. But it is
mm,
important that we give them the resources and we give them the tools, and that we notice the people in our lives. You know, if you are deeply connected to someone, you're going to hear in their voice, you know, no matter how much they try to hide it. You're going to see in their eyes, no matter how much they try to hide it. So when
mm,
we're connected in community and can see somebody, we say, sis, nope, this isn't you. I know it's not. Let's have a talk. Let's have a
mm,
chat.
mm,
How can I support you? How can I uphold you? And give people that permission to be vulnerable, you know, like we're talking
mm.
about. So
Yes.
um suicidal ideation, it's rampant in our communities, more prevalent, 4 times more prevalent amongst Black men than women, right? And there are societal pressures, there are pressures to perform among Black men, and they feel like they can't, they feel like they don't have an outlet to talk about it. The machismo, you know, still runs high in our community, and wanting to be a provider and protector and wanting to be all the things, and there's still a lot of pressure being all the things.
Yeah, yeah. That's so real. And I want to give a shout out to also Jay Barnett. Check him out. He has a whole tour and a whole movement called Heal Bro. So he's doing a lot of conversations all throughout the country and the world, globally, around Black men and mental health and vulnerability. And he's a former football player that had a few failed, thank God, failed suicide attempts. So this is something that we need to talk about. And as we, get ready to close out and just talk about how do we reclaim our joy. I'm going to share a couple ways that we can reclaim our joy. Then I'd love to just pass it for a quick, maybe 1, 2 things that you think, John and Leslie, as we close out. But I'm going to give us 8 ways to reclaim our joy. One, I would say, as a woman of faith, really cultivating a faith practice. Um, for me, every morning, that is waking up with prayer and gratitude. For me, it's reading a scripture. For others, it might be something else. And even using music to elevate my space, my atmosphere, my mood. Get moving and exercising, and John can tap into
Mhm.
that. But doing some deep breathing and taking a mindful moment just to center and calm ourselves. Taking a break and giving yourself permission to pause. Doing more of the things that make your spirit come alive. So take a moment and write down 3 things that you love to do that don't require travel. They don't really require much money. What are 3 things? It could be going for a walk. It could be taking a nice drive. It could be listening to your favorite music or one of your favorite shows. What are things you love to do? So re-engaging your hobbies and talking to someone, and especially having a therapist or mental health provider in getting that body again moving. John, what might be one or two things that you say that we can do to reclaim our joy?
I would say, just piggybacking off what you were saying earlier, it is definitely important to start to first change the way that you perceive and think about yourself. Because the problem with that is if you don't start there, you can't change how other people see you. So the energy that you put off towards others is how they're going to first treat you. So if you seem or carry yourself in a way of lack of confidence or lack of just shortness in yourself, people are also going to they're going to give you that same energy back. So just start to meditate. I think meditation is a big thing. Like just taking the time to, whether it's a space that you have in your house, if you're somebody that travels a lot, just on the plane, versus looking at a TV show, just take some time to meditate first, manifest the thing that you want in life. I found a lot of power in that, and just start to journal your thoughts and the reasons why you feel the way you do. So that way, when that thought comes again, you can at least try to figure out what triggered it, and then like how could you better, tend to it the next time around. Especially when it comes to what made you want to indulge in more foods than you usually do, the comfort food. So I say start there as far as on a more spiritual side, just start to find the power that you have again, because it's there. You just have to find it.
Yeah.
And then, like you said again, like start to move. Even the days where I don't feel like moving, like I'm busy all day long. I don't shut down until about 10 o'clock at night. So for me, I'm moving all day. But even if I know, like, man, I don't feel like going to the gym, once I get there and I get moving, I feel a lot better.
Absolutely.
So it's always hard getting there. But once you're there, you appreciate yourself a lot better for giving yourself that time. Because if you're going to give somebody else 8 hours, whether it's from home or you're actually going inside the building, give
Right.
yourself 30 minutes. Just give yourself
Right.
30 minutes because that's your time. I always try to find your time, like, even if that's something you have to negotiate when you're trying to get a new job. Say, hey, I know this is a job that requires a lot of hours, but I just want to make sure that I can have this time to myself. I need it so that I can perform better at work. If you never negotiate, you never get what you deserve.
Yeah, that's
Um, yeah, if you don't get what you don't ask for, and as you think, so you should be. So just watch the way you think about yourself.
right.
Um, Marsha, I see a comment as far as my detox routine.
Hmm.
Um, I actually have. Can I grab it right quick and just show her, like, what I have? And she
Yeah,
wanted to see.
I will say we're a little over time, so feel
Okay,
free to let Leslie. But if you feel like you can do that in 1 minute, or if you want to put something in the chat or
I
something
can
like
I
that.
can do it. I can do it less than a minute. It's gonna be like 10 seconds.
Great, great, great.
um, Marsha, what I do is I take a this detox. It's more than one, but it's like a parasite mucus cleanse, and there's 3 balls that I take, 4 ounces of every single day. And with that, I have to be on a diet of like no sugars, no white rice, things of that nature.
Hmm.
So that way my body can fully cleanse. I do it about every 6 months. I'll try to put a link in for Naya to, I don't know if I can say the comment or not, but it's
What-
holistically made.
Yeah, what's the name of it?
It's holistically made.
Oh, that's the name of
Um,
it, of
yeah,
the
holistically
detox.
made. So,
Okay.
so it's holisticallymade.com. She does a 7-day detox. I take that every 6 months, just based off of like what I'm consuming. If I fall back off again, I can feel the cravings coming back. Sometimes, and I just detox my body. It helps me just kind of restart all over again, and it really helps me to just regain my focus.
That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you, Marsha, because I was thinking the same thing and I forgot to ask. So perfect. All right. So I'm mindful of time. So Leslie, if you have something that you can share with us in less than 1 minute.
I ditto everything that Jonathan has said. He took all my good answers. So everything that you all have said is right on point, ensuring that you work on your thought life, you work on your community and belonging life, you work on your movement, right? Even 1 hour, right, Jonathan? Even 1 hour of just walking can do a world
Yep.
of difference, is what I hear. And I'm trying to do that now too. So
Yeah,
everything
20
that you all have
minutes. It doesn't have to be an hour because a lot of people are not going to start with the hour. They don't have an hour, but 20 minutes can be just as effective as antidepressants in the sun, especially in
Yes.
sunlight. Yeah.
absolutely. So y'all got all the great answers, and I ditto everything.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Well, it's been lovely connecting in community with all of you here, all of you online. And let's close out with a mindful moment of breath work and focusing on our joy. So I'm going to invite you to lower your gaze or even close your eyes, relax your shoulders, your jaw, and even just bring yourself to a place of awareness and presence. We can place one hand on our heart, one hand on our abdomen. And I'm going to invite you to just take a nice breath in, breathing in joy and peace in through the nose, filling up the lungs, the abdomen. Slowly exhaling, releasing any stress or anxiety. Again, breathing in joy, light, peace. Exhaling, releasing any darkness, any doubt, any heaviness. With your next breath, I invite you to take in a breath of gratitude and joy. Breathing in and thinking of those thoughts that produce joy, the people, the things, the activities, what produces joy in your life. Exhaling, releasing anything that does not serve us. And with your last breath, allowing space for maybe a few more of those things that you're grateful for. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Would love for you to share with us in the chat. So family, well-being, a beautiful day outside, and having this sense of community. So thank you all for joining. And it was truly a pleasure. I want to say visit us at utopiasgw.com. We're all about creating global wellness community. We even have a global wellness retreat coming up in September to Bali, Indonesia for women and women leaders. So you can check that out at utopialivingretreats.com. Thank you all and make it a Utopia Living Day. See you soon.